In this video, we are going to show you guys how to do a maintenance. When your client comes back after getting their first piece, I always recommend they come back within 2 weeks because almost everybody can go 2 weeks on an application. So I always recommend come back in 2 weeks and then we ask them some questions and figure out their issues. So you can see it's been 2 weeks since he's been in. His hair system still looks like it's in good shape. So I would always ask them, did you have any issues? So did you have any issues over the last 2 weeks?
No.
So he had no issues. The next thing when if they tell me, hey, I didn't have any issues, I give it a tug and I see how strong it's on there. Normally a lot of guys like to get to that 3 week point, just for availability, scheduling, everybody likes that 3 week point where they don't feel like they're here all the time. So his is still on there rock solid. It's been 2 weeks. We're in Florida. It's been very hot the last couple weeks. There's been the heat index has been high. The humidity's been high. So for him to get 2 weeks with tape and lace in Florida, it's great. If we were going to be going forward, I would say, hey, next visit, let's try 3 weeks. See how that holds up for you. Normally when clients come back, if they have any issues, it's usually just a slight bit of lifting in the front, which you can tell he's not having. But if they do, it's usually just a little bit of lifting in the front or maybe the sides or the back. There might be a little bit of lifting. And then if that's the case, I usually ask them, did you do anything in those last couple weeks that you normally don't do? Like that's not normally part of your lifestyle. If they came in and he was like, yeah, my front lifted a little bit on, day 12. Okay, what have you done in the last 2 weeks that you normally don't do? And if he's like, oh, I ran a 5K. Okay, cool. Let's try 2 weeks again, but don't run the 5K. The reality is almost everybody can get 3 weeks out of wearing a hair system. It's our job to figure out how we would troubleshoot that. If he came back in and the only issue he had was a little bit of lifting in the front, 3 weeks is still good to go. If he came back in and half of his system was coming loose after 12 days, then we have to, ask the questions. What did you do? Did you swim? Did you wash it excessively? Did you sweat excessively? Did you run a 5K? Did you do any of these things? And then if the answer is no, if they're like, no, I didn't, it just came loose. Okay, cool. Now we're going to try to find a different bonding method that might work better. Maybe we have to switch to glue. Maybe we have to use a different type of tape. Maybe we have to use a combination of the two, right? This is our job as experts to understand this, to give them the best experience possible. So now that we've determined that he had no issues for the 2 weeks, I feel good. Now the next step is going to be how to do the maintenance, right? We're going to take this piece off, clean it, reapply it, give him a haircut, and make sure he's good to go. So if you make a mold, which we did on this client, I know that I can take this off, clean him up, shave down what was there, and I know his hairline is going to be the same. If you did not make a mold, the best thing that I recommend for everybody is find their hairline, 1 finger width below the hairline, make a mark. Do that for both the sides and the front hairline. And the reason we want the 1 finger is because if for whatever reason, when I'm cleaning this piece in the sink, I remove any residue that's in his hairline. If I trace too close, I'm going to remove these white lines. But I know that 1 finger width is going to give me enough wiggle room where I can clean his head thoroughly, and when I come back, these white lines are still going to be there. So now we're going to take him over to the sink, take the piece off, and I'll walk you guys through how we do that. We're going to start from the front and we're going to peel this system back. For a lot of men, this is one of the most relaxing, like their favorite part when they come in for a service is getting this piece peeled back and getting their scalp cleaned. Now, you want to ensure that the comfort levels are there. You want to ensure that you're not hurting them. There's a lot of guys who just you say, go ahead, rip it off. But at the end of the day, you're pulling this tape off of hair, or the glue, you're pulling it out of hair that has now grown back. So you want to try to pull this back as easy as possible. And I've been doing this a long time, and there's some guys who have a higher pain tolerance and threshold than others. And I've seen guys squint in my chair, and I don't want that for them. So sometimes I'll have to use my fingers and massage here And as I'm pulling back, almost like when you get your eyebrows waxed, they rip the wax off and then they rub it because they want to, you know, make sure they're not hurting you. So you can see this is kind of coming off here. And you can see that there's some residue on his scalp. Now, this isn't bad. This is just dirt, oil breakdown. We have our piece pulled off. You can see there's some residue there. And you can see there's some residue and buildup on his scalp. So what we're gonna do is we are just gonna spray some residue remover, some cleaner, and we're just gonna massage that into the scalp. And what this is gonna do is this is gonna slowly break down any of this residue that's left, any of this buildup that's left here. And then after we do that, we're gonna use a detoxifying shampoo. We're gonna use a shampoo that has a little bit of microbeads in it that's gonna help cleanse the scalp, because we want to ensure a clean scalp when it comes time for a reapplication. So we're just gonna use a little bit of this, kind of massage that in as well. Now, there are gonna be some people who are gonna come back and their scalps are gonna be a lot dirtier than others. And whatever bonding method you used might be harder to clean than you know, others, I guess. So you have to be patient. You have to make sure you're doing a good job here, because this is going to make sure that they're having a successful journey with their hair system. If you're having a hard time cleaning this, Dawn dish soap is also something that is skin safe, and it's a natural degreaser. So you can use dish soap to get the head really nice and clean. Sometimes you might have to do it, you know, a few times. I've had people before where I've spent a lot of time in the sink cleaning their heads. If you join this kit, join this course, and you received a kit, these combs that were in your kit were not meant because we thought they were the greatest combs of all time. We wanted to show you that we use these combs to go through and remove any of the residue from the hair and help get any of the breakdown out of the hair. So don't, you know, I'm sure when you got these combs, you were like, what are these combs for? These aren't even good combs. No, these are throwaway combs. You buy these in bulk on Amazon, and I use these to scrape the head and kind of get any of that residue removed, get it out of the hair. So that way when we get everything clean, this just makes my job a lot easier. And you can see there, like, we're already getting some residue. And then if you have anybody, I'm not saying his head is very hard, because his head is basically clean now. All I would need to do is use regular shampoo or conditioner, and you know, his head would be good as new. But if you do have some people that are hard, I buy these nail brushes in bulk off of Amazon, and sometimes it's nice. You have to be gentle because they are a little bit stiff, but sometimes it's nice to break up any of the residue that's in there. So sometimes I'll use these and just kind of go through, but you got to be careful because this can be a little bit rough on the scalp. So sometimes I'll just use the side of the bristles, just go through and kind of get everything as clean as I can. So now you can see that we have his head nice and clean. And you know, a lot of people, they often question, you know, what does a head look like after it's been, you know, after you've been wearing a system for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or, you know, does the system damage any of the hair? And as you can see here, his natural hair still grew back exactly the way that it would have without wearing a hair system. So now I'm just going to apply some regular shampoo and conditioner, get his head cleaned up, and then we will meet you back at the chair. So now we're going to prep the scalp. We're going to shave down any hair that has grown back, alcohol, scalp protector, and then we're going to work on our system, get our system clean, taped up, and ready for reapplication. And you can see what I was talking about earlier where this mark is still here, so I know his hairline starts a finger above that. This mark obviously went away, and the mark on the other side went away because I was shampooing his head, but you can see that this one still remained. So I still have my guide regardless. And if I didn't, I still have the mold that we made from when he came in, and you can see where his mold lines up on the edge, and it's about a finger above where my mark was, just like I had planned. So when you're shaving their head down, you can always see where there's a natural distinct line of the regrowth versus their natural hair that you left the first time. And if you're ever not sure, the rule of thumb is to just pull this hair down, and anything that sticks up can be cut. And if you're really not sure, you can take your mold, measure your mold out, and then double check and see if you had to recut anything or if there was anything else that needed to be recut. So I know that I'm confident in where I need to shave everything down. So I'm gonna go through, shave his head down, and then we're gonna pick back up where I will be showing you how to clean the piece, retaping the piece, and then we'll reapply the piece. All right, so after I take the piece off, I like to soak it in a warm water bath with my solvent. And the reason I like to do that is because it makes the tape a lot easier to come off, causing the system to shed less. So now that that's been sitting in this bath, you can see how easily this tape is just peeling off the system. And there's minimal shedding, there's no tension being placed on the system at all. It's just coming off nice and easy. You can see how easy that was. So now this tape is off, and as always, there's always going to be some residue and some buildup caked in on the lace, and you can see it's always on the edges of where the tape is. So you can see there's a little bit here, there's a little bit in the middle, and then there's a little bit always by the hairline. Usually with the hairline, it's always on the very edge. You can see some of these dark spots here. That's usually what that's from. So now what I do is I take that comb and I'm just going to go through and kind of gently comb the front of the piece. And what that's doing is that's just breaking up any of that buildup that was on the front. And it's just going to soften it up for me. So now when I go back in, you can see some right there. So I just use this comb, go back in, and I'm just gently combing everything out, trying not to cause any shedding. And you can see as I'm combing it, some of the residue that's coming loose getting stuck in the hair strands. That's fine because when I shampoo and condition the hair strands, a lot of this residue is going to come right out. You can see some of it's still there. Alright, so hopefully I was able to break down a lot of this residue now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the piece, inside out. Actually, get rid of this bowl. I'm going to keep the piece with the lace side down. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just use the pressure from this hose to kind of go through there and break up any of the residue that's sitting in the piece. And like I've told you before, when it's wet, you can never tell whether there's residue left or not. You can only tell when it's dry. Sometimes when it's wet, it looks real good, and then you get it dry and you realize there's a whole bunch of residue that you missed. And you can see there that a lot of the residue does appear to be gone, but again, it's wet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that same shampoo that has the beads in it, and we're going to use that and just gently massage it to the base of the piece. So I'm just taking a little bit of this and I'm just going to work it into the piece. And I'm trying to focus on the areas around the edges because that's where I know any of that residue is going to be stuck. And I'll just take my comb, go back in, start combing some of that out. Looks like to me we have most of our residue gone. Every now and then there's just going to be like little tiny chunks that sometimes will come out with the shampoo, the conditioner, or even the blow dryer when you start drying the base. Alright, so now we're just going to use our shampoo. We're going to clean the hair because we want to make sure we're getting all of the residue and the oil from the solvent. We want to make sure we're getting all the solvent cleaned out of this as well. So we're just going to take this, lather this up. And I always like to, when I shampoo, I really like to brush through the hair as I'm doing it because it's very easy for these systems to get tangled and knotted with the shampoo. So I like to brush through the system in the way that they wear it. So if I know he wears it forward and he wears his crown backwards, I'm going to brush it as such, and you can see how that's coming together. If he wore his hair backwards, then I would absolutely start brushing everything backwards, but he doesn't. So now I'm just going to go through, rinse out, you know, the shampoo that was in there. And when I'm doing this, I like to rinse it with some warm water. And then when it comes down to conditioning, I'll condition it and rinse it out with cold water, trapping in any of that moisture. But you can see before I even apply the conditioner, there's no residue spots left on this. It's very, very, very clean. So now conditioner, cold water, and then we will tape it up and apply it. So after you shampoo, condition your piece, and rinse it with cool water, you need to blow dry it, make sure your base is completely dry, and then you can start applying your tape. So I always like to start with the hairline, get the hairline tape placed on there first. And your starting point doesn't matter really that much at all. It really, as long as you get everything covered and everything laid down correctly, where you start isn't going to matter. So these, I like to use the tape tabs for the front because they have that nice like little curvature to them. And I'm putting them as close to the edge as I can possibly get. And it's totally okay to, overlapping them is totally okay. You just want to make sure when you're doing it, you want to make sure that you're removing the backing from the previous piece. Because then when it comes time to pull the pieces off, if you didn't remove the backing, you're going to end up peeling off all the tape that you just put down. So I usually go like this. Now we're going to do this side. do one more to be safe. Go one more down the sides here. And then what I'll do for the middle and the sides is I like to pre-cut my strips so they're a lot easier to work with. Now the other option you have here is you could place a lot of the sides and the back tape around the sides and the back of their head instead of on the piece. This is definitely more of a preference thing. I like to do, normally when I'm in the shop, I like to do the scalp instead of just the piece. But again, it's a preference thing. There's no right or wrong way to do it, as long as you're securing your edges and everything's lined up okay. Now back here, when you have some more of that curvature, that's where the contour strips are great because they're already pre-curved. So you're just going to do the same thing on the back as you did on the front. Get those edges covered. And the reason the edges being covered is so important is because clients, they haven't worn a system before. This is what they're going to freak out about. Those little tiny bits of lifting, those are the things that they're going to complain about. Or I can feel this little edge, this little flap coming loose. Like, you want to make sure these edges are covered and there's no reason for them to have any sort of flap. Even this space right here, I would cover that just to be sure. Rather be safe than sorry. We're going to do one more support strip back here. And then we're going to do one more support strip in the middle to make sure he's covered all the way around. Now he's going to have support the entirety of his head. There's going to be coverage. So now we're going to go put this on his head. If you made your mold, you would know that you could cross-reference your mold, cross-check your mold, make your dots, and then when you come to put the hair system on, everything will line up accordingly. Or if you didn't use a mold and you decided to measure with your finger, you can see here, this mold lines up exactly with where my 1 finger width is. So when I go to lay his hair system down, I know that the edge of his system needs to be 1 finger width above this line here. So now we're going to lay that system on and give him a haircut, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to ask you to look back for me. 1 finger above the line. You can see my edges are lining up perfectly. I'm just going to keep walking this back the way I normally do. Now we're just going to press the edges. You don't want to like wiggle everything because you don't want to loosen any of the knots of the system. You just want to go around, you want to press the edges down, make sure everything lined up perfectly the way that you wanted it to. Make sure there's no creases, no wrinkles, no bubbles. Make sure everything's on there nice. And I can feel that everything's feeling very secure. Everything's locked in, feels good. Everything looks good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut the sides of his hair, and the reason I like to cut the sides after I put a system on is because a lot of times you can see where the edge of the system will come down into their natural hair, and you know that's where your stopping point is. Whereas if I cut his hair prior to putting the piece on, there's a chance that I could have taken his blend too high or left it too low, and I would have had to go back in and do this again anyways. So we're going to comb this out. I'm going to go through, fade his hair, and then he will be all set, good as new. All right, so you guys can see that if a system is done the right way, properly, even after 2 weeks worth of grow out, you would still not be able to tell where his system blends into his natural hair. And this is 2 weeks without a haircut. So now I'm going to show you guys, a lot of you have been asking how to fade the sides. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where my system ends, which I can see is right about here. I'm going to brush a lot of that system out of the way, because this is the issue that a lot of people have when it comes to going to a regular barber, for the systems. Regular barbers will go in and they'll start cutting the system hair, and they don't need to do that. All they need to do is cut this hair, and then the system will blend on top of it. So I'm going to show you guys exactly how I blend. Sorry, I just want to comb that out. I'm going to show you guys exactly how I blend natural hair, how I would do a fade on his hair, so you guys have an idea of what my fading system looks like. I know based on where his system length is and where his system falls, I know that my fading system is very simple to do a men's haircut on. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to start with my number 3 guard all the way open. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to have to edit this because that was the wrong guard. First things first, I'm going to start with my number 3 guard all the way open, and I'm just going to come up pretty much to that parietal ridge, and I'm leaving hair doing this. I'm just coming straight off the head. Then I'm going to switch over to my 1.5 guard, because I know my 1.5 fades nicely when it's open right into a number 3. And again, I'm riding up off the head, I'm not going into the head. Now I'm going to go with my open clipper, and I'm just leaving a finger's width between my open clipper and my 1.5. Open clipper there. And then depending on their hair texture, sometimes I can go right into a 1/2 guard, flick out and erase this line, but because he has very fine straight hair, I'm going to use my number 1, and I'm just going to kind of lighten up that bottom line a little bit. Remove some of that. Throw my 1/2 guard on. Again, these are all open, by the way. I'll close and adjust as I need to. So this is a half guard open up. Closing halfway, going through, removing those lines. Cool. Now we're gonna go trimmer. And guys, this is just quick, rough draft fade. I'm trying to show you as I record here, so if the fade isn't coming out great or the quality of this video isn't good, I apologize. I'm standing directly behind the camera. My hands are here. Close clipper. I'm just tapping at that trimmer line. Open it up a little bit more. Now, I'll go back in, kind of detail it a little bit more. Just using the corner of my blades to kind of finesse this blend a little bit. The one thing that I constantly get told when people are coming in for hair systems is like, oh, well, I chose you because your haircuts were better than anyone else's who I saw doing this. And I'm not bragging or boasting. I mean, I had a long barbering career before I started doing the hair systems. So obviously I've been cutting hair for a while. A lot of the people that do hair replacement, you know, started on the cosmetology world, did a lot of women's hair first. So your haircuts are what's going to set you apart from the other providers that are out there and make people come choose you. So now I'm just going to go in, soften this blend. There you go. Now we've done our full re-app. You can see his fade, you know, his piece still blends back into his sides. The fade looks good, the hair looks good, and he's good to go. Now you guys know how to do a full reapplication on a client using tape with lace.